The Hidden Strength of Humility, Fr.Mermier's Way, a speech based on his writings and witness. My dear brothers and sisters, we live in an age intoxicated with self promotion and self reliance. Everywhere we hear, make yourself visible, assert yourself, be powerful. In such a world, humility often appears outdated, weak, or even irrelevant. But for Father Fr.Mermier, the founder of the MSFS and SAC, humility was not irrelevant. It was indispensable. For him, humility was not a vague idea, but a lived reality. It grounded his prayer, shaped his relationship, and inspired his missionary zeal. Today, I invite each of you to journey with me into Father Mermier's understanding of humility, not as a fragile sentiment, but as the strength of the apostle, the root of holiness, and the mirror of Christ crucified. The first point for our reflection today is the foundation of all virtue. Father Mermier never tired of saying that humility is the foundation of all virtue. He wrote, "Without humility, the theological virtues lack foundation." Why? Because humility puts us in our right place before God. It makes us recognize our dependence, our nothingness, our need for grace. He described humility as the basis of the spiritual edifice. Without this first disposition, there is neither beginning nor progress nor perfection. A building without a foundation collapses. In the same way, the spiritual life without humility cannot endure. For him, humility was not weakness but truth. It is the starting point of wisdom, the spark of justice, the root of prudence, and the condition of faith, hope, and love. Without humility, he insisted, every virtue is hollow. The second point for our reflection today is Jesus Christ's model of humility. Where did Father Mermier learn this vision? From Jesus Christ himself. The incarnation was for him the great school of humility. He wrote, "The great and principal teaching which Jesus Christ gives in his incarnation is humility." Think of it. God became a child, dependent, fragile, poor, not to impress, but to teach. To teach us that the way to holiness is the way down, the way of littleness, meekness, and self emptying. That is why Jesus Christ said, "Learn from me, for I am meek and humble of heart." And Father Mermier insisted, Christ never once deviated from humility, neither should we. The third point for our reflection today, humility as self knowledge. Humility for Father Mermier begins with truthful self knowledge. He asked bluntly, "What is a missionary who does not take pains to know himself daily?" But notice, he did not mean self hatred. Humility is not beating ourselves up, it is seeing ourselves in the light of God. When one sister confessed that she felt weak and incapable, he replied, "I bless the divine mercy for showing you your miseries, provided these feelings do not produce discouragement." That is the key. Humility is not despair. It does not paralyze us. Genuine humility makes us trust like children, pray with confidence, and rise with hope. The humility which discourages, he said, does not come from God. True humility bows low, but always in the light of mercy. The fourth point for our reflection today, a humble founder, a reluctant leader. Mermier's humility was no theory. It was the way he lived, even as the founder of a congregation. When he petitioned Rome for recognition, he wrote with disarming honesty, I acknowledge that I possess a mediocre intelligence and knowledge. I am without virtue and merit, yet it has pleased divine wisdom to assign me to the missions. Even after founding the MSFS congregation, he never considered himself worthy. He admitted, hoping that another priest would replace him as superior, because my conduct seems so little in conformity with our rules. Here was a man chosen by God to found a missionary family, yet he considered himself unfit. And that is precisely the point. In his littleness, God was glorified. The fifth point for our reflection today, humility in mission. Humility for Fr.Mermier was not just personal piety, it was essential for mission. He warned, without this practical knowledge of one's weakness and nothingness, the missionary becomes a reed shaken by the wind. Missionary zeal, he said, must be grounded in Christ's words. Without me, you can do nothing. Not very little, but nothing. At the same time, humility fuels confidence. I can do all things in Him who strengthens me. Mermier loved the image of a scale. On one side, distrust of self, on the other, trust in God. As one rises, the other falls. Both together keep the missionary balanced. This paradox, knowing our misery while relying on God's mercy, is the secret of apostolic strength. The sixth point for our reflection today is the dangers of false humility. Yet, Fr.Mermier warned constantly about false humility. Self contempt without hope, he said, is not from God. God is constantly making you aware of your misery, provided these feelings don't lead you to discouragement, they are excellent. False humility keeps our eyes on ourselves. True humility lifts our eyes to God. The seventh point for our reflection today, humility and obedience. For Fr.Mermier, humility was inseparable from obedience. He wrote to one conference, even when the superior is only what he is, his subordinates owe him respect, submission, and love. To another, he advised, the fears founded on your humility are legitimate, but they must be guided by obedience, else they degenerate into failure. Without obedience, humility risks becoming pride in disguise. Real humility trusts not only God but also the imperfect instruments God places over us. The 10th point for our reflection today, humility and leadership. As a leader, Mermier carried a heavy burden. He often examined his failures with deep pain. He once confessed, I reproached myself for my faults, my lack of motivations, my negligence. It appeared to me that God should treat me thus because of my pride. Yet, even here, he found peace in being humbled. Quoting the psalmist, he would say, it is good that you have humiliated me. His leadership was never about prestige but about service. To one sister, he wrote, love to be unknown and to be thought of as nothing. He preferred obscurity to honor. He trusted not in reputation but in God's providence. That kind of leadership, humble, hidden, serving, is precisely what the church still longs for today. The ninth point for our reflection today, humility and the cross. In one of his exhortations, Mermier asked, lament over the evils of your pride and self love. But are you humble at heart? He reminded his missionaries, we have nothing to make us appear great in the eyes of the world. and in our distress, to wish to be somebody is pettiness, is folly. True humility kneels at the foot of the cross. There we see the Christ who annihilated himself to the death of the cross. Humility is crucifixion. It is hidden strength. It is the power of self-giving love. The 10th point for our reflection today, the final exhortation, a spirit of life, not of discouragement. My dear friends, let us end where Fr.Mermier often ended, in hope. He once wrote to his missionaries in India, "The spirit that I want you to have is a spirit of humility, a spirit of life and not of discouragement." That is the humility he desired for his sons and daughters. A humility that trusts, that perseveres, that gives life. So let us make this our prayer. Not a humility that shrinks, but one that believes. Not a humility that despairs, but one that dares. For, as St. Paul reminds us, what have you that you have not received? And if you have received, why do you boast? Let us live this truth, not as shame, but as peace. Let us follow the path of Fr.Mermier, whose humility changed lives, bore fruit, and gave glory to the God from whom all things come. Live Jesus.